Victoria Decides. Live election night coverage from 6 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time on the 6 News YouTube channel and our website, SIXNewsAU.com.
Clifford Hayes, welcome to 6 News. How are you?
Good, thanks, Leonardo. How are you?
Good, thank you. So let's go to this Sustainable Australia Party. What have you actually been able to do in the 4 years since you were actually elected back in 2018 as a member for the Southern Metro region? What achievements have you actually been able to accomplish in that time?
Well, I think really the big accomplishment that I'm proud of is getting an inquiry up into the planning system, which is really pretty tawdry. It's really a planning system that doesn't work for us very well. But a lot of concerns about overdevelopment in our area and lack of community power and heritage being destroyed, our open spaces being affected. So these are all things that I lobby about in Parliament, but getting that inquiry up and getting the government to agree to run it, even though it was truncated in this term, we hope to complete it in the next term if I get back in and we get enough support to press on with it. So that's my major achievement. The rest is also very strenuous lobbying about certain things.
And when it comes to the election, I was just going to say, do you reckon most people in the Southern Metro region would be aware of not just that major achievement, but also your lobbying on other issues? Because, you know, when people go to vote either on election day or early, do you think they're going to remember your party, remember your name, and remember what you've actually been able to do?
Well, I certainly hope so, Leonardo, and I think those that are tuned in will know that. I think the general public are often not fully across most political issues. Some aren't even aware that there's an election on at this stage, but those that know about planning and know about the environment, I really think they are well aware of the work that we do.
Now, you say on your website under major policies, you say that we need to urgently slow our population growth to protect our way of life and our natural assets. We need to return immigration back to what it was before the spike of the past 15 years. Is immigration not a big federal issue, though? Like, how do you actually plan to achieve that policy, or at least work towards it as a minor party MLC in Victoria? Or have you been able to work towards anything like that?
To get direct action on this, we would have to get into the federal parliament and get our numbers heard there. And I think in the state, I think it's very essential that state governments start lobbying about this, because the infrastructure costs, the environmental costs of the way we're planning our population policy are really quite destructive. And it has been mentioned in the inquiries that I've been part of in the Environment and Planning Committee, in both of the reports into ecosystem decline and into the planning system itself. Our rapid population growth has got a lot to answer for.
Yeah, and I guess, is that an issue you think? I know you've been talking about your other issues, but of course, your party does have your own general broad policies. Is overdevelopment an actual issue that you think most of the people in the Southern Metro region, or at least enough that'd vote for you, is that something they do care about? Because I think most would argue the big issues this election are just going to be COVID and corruption. Well,
yes, I do think so. I think that there's a significant number of people that are very concerned about this, especially those that live in, all of my suburbs. I would say that they're really concerned about development issues, infrastructure issues, and corruption, as you talk about. That's a big issue in itself, and the role that big industries like the property industry play in government and political donations in that regard, and the amount of influence they have indirectly over government. Those are all issues that have some confluence, I believe, Leonardo.
Yeah. Now, of course, when it comes to actually getting him in the upper house, we do have the group voting ticket system here in Victoria. There's no doubt it helped you in 2018. So, for the record, do you support the system? Do you support keeping group voting tickets?
Well, I do until we had a more democratic method of doing it. What I like about the group voting ticket is that it helped me and 11 other crossbenchers get into the upper house. And I think that having a a diverse range of opinions and ideas coming into the upper house has been an absolute boon. The quality of debate that we have because of these various influences in the upper house, I think nearly everyone that watches upper house politics really believes that in the last term we've seen a significant improvement in the quality of debate and the contents of that debate. So yes, I think there are other systems that could be employed to give a more diverse range. But if you got rid of the group voting ticket and as it is now, you would probably go back to having less. You'd have the major parties having control of the upper house again. I'd say complete control. I mean, not just the numbers they have, but even greater numbers.
Yeah, I mean, look, you touched on it there, but there are other systems, and I think New South Wales is one example with
Yeah,
their upper house that don't
that
involve
is a good
preferences
system,
being
Leonardo.
ignored and changed. You think that is a good system? So would
That is,
if there was,
I,
yeah, I was just going to say, so if there was theoretically, an option to or a bill that would try to get in the a system like the New South Wales Upper House has, or if there was a bill, and this is obviously assuming you're re-elected, if there was a bill to introduce a system like or exactly the same as the New South Wales Upper House, you would be supporting that because
I, look, I
it is
can't say I'd
similar to
support
us,
it.
but obviously they're
Yeah,
very different when it comes to how preferences are kind of counted.
yeah, sure. I would be interested in looking at any good system. So I can't say what I'd support without really seeing the details of how it would work and what opportunities it would give for diversity. But I'm happy to look at all of those systems that give a good range of opinions in the upper house.
Um,
Um,
Yeah, I was just going to say, because you mentioned it did help you, and that is absolutely true, and I think that goes to a lot of the crossbench, if not all of it, in the
mm,
upper house there. Do you think it's fair, though, that you can have I think it was 1.32% of the vote, that was a party vote, I think above the line, and then there are parties with higher vote than you or had higher votes than you in the Southern Metro region, and they didn't get in. They didn't get a single seat. Do you think that is a fair system that we can have that happen? I think one of your upper house colleagues, Rod Barton, had less than 1% of the vote too in a different seat. So is it currently? Would you say it's a fair system?
well, I don't know about how you'd categorise it, but I do think that it does provide diversity. It's a preferential election, so even though primary votes seem to, you'd think that it should go on primary votes, preferential votes are designed to count the number of preferences. Now, in the recent council election, we had a sitting councillor who got something like 36% of the primary vote, but couldn't get in, or didn't get in because the preferences went elsewhere. So even though he got more primary votes than anyone else, because it's a preferential election, where two or three candidates are elected for an electorate, such as the like the upper house election. It's not how many primary votes you get that necessarily determine whether you get in. It's how the preferences run. Now, all the other parties do preference harvesting in a different sort of way. They have professional people that do it for them, and they trade preferences in this way to get in. They don't always get the most number of primaries. Like the second place holder on the Labor or Liberal ticket in many electorates only get a couple of hundred votes necessarily as primaries, but still get the preference flow to get in. So I don't think the number of primary votes necessarily, well, they don't determine who wins in preferential elections, but
No, I
whether
mean,
it's a fair
and
system or
yeah,
not, it's
yeah,
another matter.
that I mean that is true under our system, and of course, we've got preference being ignored and changed, and that's above the line. But of course, I could rant about above the line voting for a while. You mentioned preference harvesting there. I was just going to say, also just quickly for the record, two questions. Are you planning at all to work with the so-called preference whisperer Glenn Drury, or are you going to be determining your own above-the-line preferences, and not just for you specifically, your party in the entire or all upper house regions?
No, the way I understand it is we do most of our preference dealing ourselves. The party does its own work on preferences. We do work with whoever we can to get to the smaller parties and do deals with them. So we will work with anyone that will help us to get the required preferences. So and really how that is done is probably best directed to party headquarters, but we try to do most of it ourselves.
Gotcha. And just finally, as interesting as I'm sure the upper house will be this election, we all know the lower house is where the government is formed. In terms of a general prediction, what do you think? Are we going to see 4 more years of Andrews, coalition, a minority government? What are you predicting?
Well, elections are very hard to predict. I can't even predict whether I'll get back, but I would say that I'd say the odds seem to favour Labor at the moment. Hopefully with a reduced majority, if they get back, that they would have to talk more to independents and crossbenchers to work a government. I think that would be the best outcome. I would like to see, of course, any party that gets back needs the support of independents and crossbenchers in forming government policy.
I reckon that's a very likely outcome, but we shall see, and we shall see what happens in the upper house and
well, I hope
Southern
so,
Metro.
You never know.
Well, you're right. We never know. We'll have to wait and see for November 26th. For now, though, Clifford Hayes, member for the Southern Metro region, thanks for your time, and of course, best of luck.
Pleasure. Thanks for giving me a chance to talk today.